State of Pakistan's economy. Tweeting from a Pakistan embassy handle, a hacker recently flagged rising inflation in the country. A look at Pakistan's current and impending economic crisis and what it has been doing to tide them over. A hacker on Friday posted a tweet from the official handle of the Pakistani embassy in Belgrade, claiming government officials had not been paid for 3 months amid galloping inflation, and mockingly asked Prime Minister Imran Khan if this was Naya Pakistan he had promised. The Foreign Office in Islamabad said the claim in the tweet was baseless and unfactual. Pakistan's GDP growth is projected to touch a 4-year high of 5% in the fiscal year ending June 2022. At the same time, heightened inflationary risks and imminent balance of payment crisis has the country teetering on the brink, depending on external debt bailouts in order to stay afloat. Forex and currency crisis. Pakistan has repeatedly run into macroeconomic crisis, runaway inflation, current account and trade deficits, depleting foreign reserves and currency devaluations. It is faced with a combination of these problems again. The two immediate threats to the country's 263 billion economy come from build-up inflationary pressures and a payment crisis that stems from a combination of global and domestic factor problems that the pandemic has exacerbated. The situation is similar to and worse than the crisis of 2018, when Pakistan's foreign exchange reserves plummeted to multi-year low. As of November 19, Pakistan's entire liquid foreign reserve stood at 22.773 billion. According to the State Bank of Pakistan, the country's central bank, of this, $16.254 billion was held by the SBP. The remainder was with commercial banks. The SBP reserve declined by $691 million during the week ended November 19, primarily on account of external debt repayments, Geo News reported. Pakistan's annual economic growth in calendar year 2018 was 5.8%, but fell to 0.99% a year later and further to 0.53% in 2020, according to the World Bank. This has led to a building up of deficit on the current account, which captures the difference between a country's import and export of goods and services and includes net transfers such as foreign aid over a designated period. A persistently high deficit can potentially lead to an excess supply of country's currency in foreign exchange market, which eventually negatively impacts the value of the currency. This is a reason why the Pakistani rupee has been in a tailspin. The IMF bailout. As growth fell and debt services obligations mounted, the country, like several times in the past, has been faced with a potential balance of payment crisis. A BOP crisis is triggered when a country is unable to finance its import bills or services its external debts. Pakistan imports most items on domestic consumption, making it more vulnerable to these pressures. The increasing debt servicing obligations have added to the pressure. A 2019 Pakistan sought a rescue lifeline from the IMF like it has 13 times over the last 4 decades. In exchange for a 6 billion funding package, Pakistan had to commit to structural reforms and reducing public debt. But the funding plan stalled earlier this year over issue related to reform commitments, and an agreement could be reached only on November 22. The Pakistani authorities and IMF staff have reached a staff level agreement on policies and reforms needed to complete the sixth review. The IMF said in a statement that day, once the review is complete, 750 million in IMF special drawing rights, around 1 billion will be available to Pakistan, taking total disbursements to about 3 billion. The same day, Shaukat Tareen, who is equivalent to Pakistan's finance minister, pledged to undertake 4 other actions: withdrawal of tax exemptions and subsidies, an increase in levy on petro products, higher power tariffs, and an audit of some $1.4 billion in extra funds lent to Pakistan in April 2020 in view of the pandemic. Pakistan's government bonds reacted the day the deal was finalized, jumping between 1.3 and 2.8 cents on the US dollar, their best in over a year, according to Reuters data. The Saudi deal. On November 27, Pakistan is reported to have clinched a 3 billion loan from Saudi Arabia as its cabinet approved an agreement to keep the amount in the central bank, according to local media reports. In November 2018, Pakistan had inked a 3 billion loan, from which about $1 billion was reported as having been disbursed. Under the new agreement, the $3 billion from the Saudi government would remain in the SBP's deposit account for a year. Geo News reported it quoted Mujallis Aslam, spokesperson for the Prime Minister Finance Advisor, as saying Pakistan was expecting to get $7 billion from three sources over the next 60 days, including $3 billion in deposits from Saudi Arabia to a $1.2 billion Saudi oil facility with deferred payments, $800 million Islamic Development Bank oil facility. All of these dollar inflows, he said, would be sufficient to alleviate pressure on the country's import bills. But the loan deal with Saudi Arabia comes with extremely stringent conditions, including a record high interest rates of nearly 4%, default clauses that are near draconian, and restrictions on the legal recourse Pakistan will have against any Saudi claim. Inflation surge. Pakistan's record inflation is pushing up the price of daily staples amid mounting threats of unrest, according to media reports. Headline inflation reached 11.5% in November, up from 9.2% in October. Annual food inflation had been in double digit in most months since mid 2019, surging to as high as 23.6% in January 2020, 17.8% in July 2020, and 15.9% in April 2021, according to the State Bank of Pakistan, quoted by a November 17 World Bank paper. November marked a return to double digits. According to chairperson of the Consumer Association of Pakistan, Kaukab Iqbal, the rising prices of food items, particularly fresh fruits, milk and chicken, are having a major impact on the livelihoods and nutrition level of all families. But much of the burden of this falls on the poor, as higher prices but protein and vitamin rich foods out of their reach. While inflation is also driven by global commodity prices, regressive domestic policies have not helped matter either, with Islamabad having systematically penalized the production of high value products by focusing support on wheat and sugarcane, according to the World Bank paper authored by Daud Khan, Namas An-Najar, and William Jansen. As a result, Pakistan remains an importer of horticulture products, dairy products, despite having a massive number of animals producing below potential and cotton to feed the domestic textile industry, the authors noted. As far as balance of payments is concerned, Pakistan's current account deficits in September and October have been way larger than anticipated, reflecting both rising oil and commodity prices and improving domestic demand. The burden of adjusting to these external pressures, as the SBP's monetary policy statement in November noted, has largely fallen on the rupee. The balance of risk has shifted away from growth and towards inflation and the current account faster than expected. Looking ahead, Pakistan is expected to grow at about 5% in fiscal year 2021-22 July-June annual cycle, SPP Governor told CNBC Reza Bakir on November 24. This is 4-year high, and this growth is reflected in robust and brisk demand of even non-energy importers in Pakistan. In September, Fitch Solutions had projected growth of 4.2% in the year ending July 22, much lower than Bakir's estimate. His assertions are also more optimistic than the government's target of 4.8%. On November 24, the SBP raised its policy rate by 150 basis points to 8.75%, stating that risks related to inflation and balance of payment have increased while the outlook for growth continued to improve. The bank also lifted the cash reserve requirement for commercial banks by 1% point, the first such move in over a decade. But Bakir has asserted the government has to do more to bring down inflation, including actions to ensure there's no hoarding or price speculation for basic commodities. Thank you.